Hello, everyone. My name is Amanda Bain Garcia, and I'm very excited to welcome you all to the first installment of our shiny and new online program, Art a la Carte. This program gives a bite-sized glimpse into artworks and artists through the lens of special guests, with sometimes surprising connections to the topic of discussion. So just a little housekeeping before we get started. I'd like to remind everyone to please remain muted. If you have a question you'd like to ask our guests today, feel free to do so using the chat feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So we're kicking off our new series today with an intimate look into the Frankoma Pottery Company and the Frank family. Currently on view in the museum is the special exhibition, Frankoma Pottery for Those Who Like Nice Things. This exhibit celebrates a unique gift of over 200 iconic pieces of Frankoma pottery donated to the museum by the world-renowned architects Rodolfo Machado and Jorge Silvetti. If you've not had a chance to explore the exhibit yet, I highly recommend you take the opportunity. If you're close enough to visit us in person, the exhibit will be on view through April 13th. Or if you're too far away, you can view the exhibit through our Matterport online tour option available on our website. I believe maybe a link to that should be in the chat window for you now. Without further delay, I would like to introduce everyone to our special guests, Daniel Naegele and Dennis Glascock. Dennis is a retired Phillips Petroleum engineer turned Frankoma Pottery Company owner and operator. Dennis, that's quite the leap. You're going to have to fill us in on that later. Joining Dennis in our conversation today is Daniel Naegele. Daniel is an architect, architectural historian, and associate professor emeritus at Iowa State University. Of most interest to us today, though, Daniel is the homeowner and resident of the John and Grace Lee Frank house built in 1955 by Bruce Goff. With that, Daniel, I'm now going to hand the reins on over to you.
Thanks, Amanda. Can we have the first? Okay, that's the first slide. Yeah, I'm going to be talking about the house. I'll talk briefly about Bruce Goff, who designed the house, and a little bit about the Franks, a bit about Frankoma, and then I'll roll into the house itself. I'm having a hard time seeing my slide. There's a message on top of it. Okay. Anyway, Bruce Goff designed the house. Bruce Goff was born in 1904 in Kansas and came to Tulsa when he was 12 years old. Worked here until about 1931. Left here, went to Chicago, came back, and then became chair of the architecture school at OU in 1947. So from 1947 till 1955, he was chair of the architecture department. He was relatively famous. Some of his works were very popular, and they were published in Life magazine, which made him even more popular. Can I have the next slide, please? So John Frank was born in 1905. He went to the Art Institute in Chicago. When he graduated from there, he was made chair of the ceramics department at OU. The only problem was they didn't have a ceramics department. So he was asked to build that department, which he did do. And at the same time, relatively shortly after he started the department, he started Frankoma Pottery, not as Frankoma Pottery, but as a different pottery. In 1936, in the middle of the Depression, the university came to him and said that they thought they had a conflict of interest with his business. So he could either retire the business or retire his professorship, and he chose the latter and eventually moved to Sapulpa. In Sapulpa, he opened Frankoma Pottery. You can see here on the upper left, and a few of the pieces. The picture is of him in the 1940s with his wife, Grace Lee, who was about the same age as he. They married like 9 months after they met in 1928. And their two children, Donna on the left and Jonice there on the right, and in between John and Grace Lee. Janice was born in 1938. I believe Donna was born in 1932. So they were young women when the house was built, which is kind of important to the story. Down below is Janice and John. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah. Okay, this is Bruce Goff. These are two of his more famous houses, two of the houses that were published in Life magazine. The Ford House, which was for a painter in Aurora, Illinois, and the Bevenger House, which was in Norman, Illinois. It was destroyed about 2011, I believe. And it was for a fine artist and a ceramicist as well. Next slide, please. This is the Frank house. It's a rendering that Goff did. You can see Lucre Lane out there to the far right. The house is not a crescent shape. It's a quarter circle. It's a full quarter circle. And to enter the house, you have to come around back to the house effectively. And that's what we're looking at. We're looking at the entryway, but we're really looking at the back of the house. We're not looking at the side of the house that faces the street. So the entryway, although it is the public entryway, is a very private place, and it's flanked by these two towers. The two towers are made out of Frankoma prairie green brick, and they have gigantic planters on top of them. So there's a symmetry about it. What's interesting, I think, about the house is that it goes down the hill. So the perspective is taken from above the hill. You're looking down onto it. And then to go into the house, you would go down into the house instead of coming up into the house, as is traditional. And then you keep going down. You go down into a sunken living room. And that's the swimming pool off there to the left, about 11 o'clock there. The floor plan of the house I'll talk about in a second. I'll show you a bigger view of it. Next slide, please. So this is the house as it exists today on the left-hand side. And I'm just comparing it to a Frank Lloyd Wright house that was done at exactly the same time in 1956 in Berkeley. To show you that it's not terribly unusual, even though the house looks rather unusual to those that don't know about Wright and other things. Wright always worked in crescent shapes, so he never worked in quarter circles. You can see the tower. You can see what appears to be a clear story and a kind of lace that covers the glazing of it. Next slide, please. This is the floor plan of the house. Again, it's a quarter circle, and you would enter the house right there in the center. You'd walk down a set of steps, cross a moat. There was a moat there at one time with goldfish in it. Enter the house, and then you could keep going down into the sunken living room. The big circle in the middle of all of this is the fireplace. Again, the tongue that sticks out at about 11 o'clock there is the swimming pool. The house is kind, well, I'll talk about that later when we get to the outside. Give me the next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah. No, back one, please. Back one, please. Yeah. Okay, so this is what you would see from the street. No, next on. Next. Amanda, next slide. Yeah. This is what you see from the street. And you can see that the outside of the house, the street side of the house, has this skin on it, which is a kind of what's called a monk and nun terracotta tile that covers the exterior, which is a canted wall. And it also has a little ribbon ruffle that goes around the swimming pool. There's a series of terraces that work from the house down to the street. Next slide. This is just a detail of that exterior terracotta. The terracotta was not designed by the Franks. It was handmade. It wasn't off the shelf, but it was not peculiar to the Franks at all. Next slide, please. And this is the entry side, and it's by far the most memorable side of it. Again, the two towers are in green, prairie green tile that the Franks made. They have two gigantic planters on top of them. The planters are held up on a glass base, kind of a lantern that allows light to come into the house. And in the summertime, these planters flourish. You can see the chimney behind. To the left is what used to be a carport. They've since enclosed it. Now it's a garage. Next slide, please. And back against the auto court is a tall wall that's made out of local stone. But originally it had a lily pond in there, and there was a waterfall. St. Francis, who you can see there holding a squirrel, is the patron saint of the house. So there was a waterfall, came into the lily pond, and then that showed up at the moat that's in the front door. Next slide, please. The green brick, again, it's all made by Frankoma. It's oozing mortar. Next slide. The front entry hall. You're going to, again, go down to go into the house. You're going to cross over a moat. The door is a 900-pound door. It's a pivot hinge door. It looks just like the tiled wall. Confuses a few people. Next slide, please. This is a picture of Janice, a vintage photo, 1957. Janice would have been 20 years old there, standing next to the tile wall. Next slide, please. The interior of the house. This is taken from the kitchen, looking across with the entryway to your right, fireplace to the left, and you can see the sunlight coming in through the clear story windows. The sunlight casts the pattern of the windows on whatever surface it hits, sometimes obliquely, sometimes very bright. A promenade runs through the length of the house, and in the back you can see blue panels. Those blue panels are sliding walls or suspended from the beams. Next slide, please. Just a vintage photograph of the Franks at home. See the heavy shag carpet, and they decorated extensively with Frankoma. Next slide, please. And the fireplace, I show the fireplace largely because it's pretty nifty. It has a skylight above it, but it's all made out of Frankoma tile. So Frankoma tile on the hearth, on the chimney, and on behind it in the green. Next slide, please. And the chimney as it comes through the roof, this was taken just a couple of weeks ago. You can see it's all covered with Frankoma tile. Next slide, please. Again, I just wanted to show a vintage shot of the Frankomas at home. The fireplace was very, very important to John Frank. He didn't really ask Goff for too much in a house. He wanted a kitchen that was open to the living room. He wanted a swimming pool. He wanted the house in nature, and he wanted a real, real big fireplace. And that's what Goff gave him. Next slide, please. And this is just Donna and Janice, Donna in the pink and Janice in the white. I think this was taken about 2005, something like that. Next slide, please. This is the breakfast nook. This is where I'm sitting right now. You can see the what's called the see-through tile. It's a special tile that the Franks made, and I'll talk about it in a minute here. But you can also see the sky blue tile, which is here a brick that has a glazed terracotta finish. And then the floor tile is Ludovici. It's not a Frankoma tile, but it's a red quarry tile. Next slide, please. Just a detail of the tile. The tile is a single tile. It's an 8x8 tile. I think you can probably see the module here. It has 4 separate colors to it. One's like a wheat color, one's a blue, one's a black, and one's a green. And then the tile is rotated 90 degrees, 90 degrees, 90 degrees to come up with this pattern. The pattern is ambiguous. You can read it either as the blue circle is the center, or the void and the green cross is the center. It flip-flops as you look at it. Next slide, please. This is just a shot looking down the corridor through the bedrooms, just to show you that all the walls are movable. They're either kind of collapsible accordion walls, or else they're screens, blue screens that float, and they're suspended in space, and you can move them back and forth. So you can open the entire house up, or you can close the house down. It doesn't seal itself acoustically. Over the top is always open, but you can't really see through the walls. Okay, next slide, please. The swimming pool as it existed last summer. And again, it comes off of the dining room. Dining room leads to a porch. The porch leads to the swimming pool. And the swimming pool is kind of suspended in space, which I'll try to show you with another slide. Next one, please. This is a vintage shot. This is the Franks at home in their swimming pool. We've taken out the ladders. We've taken out the diving board. And the tile was broken, so we had to come up with a new decking material. But having taken out the diving board and the ladders, I kind of like it that way. It's much more like a reflecting pool. And there's a sense of abstraction and enlargement to it that you don't get with those particular items in it. Next slide, please. This is what I mean. There's no diving board, no ladders, and when you're in the pool, which was quite surprising to me, you're so low that all you can see are the trees, the sky, and the back of the house. You can't see the street. You can't see anything else. So the whole natural scene is abstracted when you're in the pool. And this is really heightened when the sun sets or the sun rises. Next slide, please. This is the house at night. It's not really night, it's dusk. Next slide, please. And the house in the wintertime. This is taken from the roof looking out toward the street. Next slide, please. And the house from the street side, I wanted to show you the terrace walls. And I like the terrace walls here because they're in deep shadow. So they're these horizontal striations that run across the landscape. Next slide, please. This is in our Sapulpa post office, the main post office here in Sapulpa. They have a mural that tells the story of the city around the perimeter of the upper part of the post office. And you see here John Frank and Grace Lee making their Frankoma pottery. You don't see the house in here. I'm going to sneak up there and paint it in one of these days. Next slide, please. And the Frankoma t-shirt. That's what our volleyball team wears. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much.
Amanda, you ready to switch to me? I'm going to say that was a yes. So,
Great, Dennis, take it away.
Okay, great. So the first slide here shows where we're located and our contact information. So next slide. We're gonna go over a few topics like the timeline, although Dan's covered some of that, of the history of the company. We have a new building today we built a couple years ago, and our retail store, manufacturing are all there. And then we'll talk about Frankoma, how popular it still is even today. So next slide. Dan, I think, mentioned that in 1927, John Frank graduated from the Chicago Art Institute and came down to that little school in Norman, whose name I won't mention. And he became the professor of ceramics. I'm from Missouri, by the way. Maybe that tells you why I say it that way. So he met his future wife, and that was probably the most important thing he did, meeting Grace Lee Bowman, because he was the business smarts and he was the artistic smarts, and he needed an effective business manager, and she became that. They had their first child in 32, and she became an actress and a writer. And that writer part is pretty important because we will talk a bit about a book about Frankoma later. In 1933, they started Frank Pottery, and then subsequently the next year they changed the name to Frankoma, combining their name Frank with the state of Oklahoma name. And like I tell everybody, the one lesson I want you to learn today from anything I say is there's no H in Frankoma, just Frankoma, all right? Along the way, this is an important thing for the collectors. John Frank found a pinkish colored clay in Ada, Oklahoma. And that's why people talk about Ada clay in the Frankoma pieces. And we'll get to when it switches to another clay here in a bit. Their second child was born in 1938, John East. And John East inherited amazing artistic skill from her father. She was just a brilliant artist. However, the only bad thing about that is if you told her that, she would disagree because Dad was the only true genius in the family in her mind. But she also went to that same university where Dad taught. So next slide. Okay, and then we get into a little bit of a timeline here. Let's see. In 1938, the Frank family decided to move from Norman into Sapulpa, and there's a story associated with that, but I won't go into it here. But along the way, they built a factory, and it promptly burnt down that same very year. So they had to borrow some money from a local lady, and who was very kind to them, and they rebuilt the factory. In 1954, let's see, John got tired of making that drive to Ada, and so because now going from Sapulpa to Ada is a lot further than going from Norman to Ada, so he found a nice big hill of clay in Sapulpa, and they call it Sugarloaf Hill. So it's a more reddish clay, and so that's one way you distinguish between the old clay and the new clay is the reddish for the Sapulpa clay and the pinkish for the Ada clay. And the collectors, many of the collectors really value the old Ada clay pieces much more so. Along the way, they get their house built, and that's in 1954, and then 1965. They had a really bright idea. They started the Christmas plates for Frankoma, which were kept going until 2009. And the reason why this was a smart idea was because nobody in the United States was building or making Christmas plates. It was all European, Bing & Grundle, Royal Copenhagen, and others. And so the Franks started making Christmas plates, and before you know it, in about 1968, they were making so many of these that even today you find those in about every antique shop and every place you go. They're just a 1968 Frankoma Christmas plate. They made gazillions of them. Another one that was made a lot of, I don't mention here, is the 1971 Oral Roberts Easter plate. That one Frankoma made so Oral Roberts could give those away to his donors, I believe. And Frankoma couldn't keep up with production, so they actually hired subcontracted that to McCoy Pottery, which you may have heard of in Ohio. And so you can tell the difference between one plate and the other by looking kind of at the glazes. All right, in let's see, in 1983, the factory burnt down again, and that's one of the problems with pottery companies is they tend to burn down over time. The kilns get to be a headache of some kind, and so they lost the building and then rebuilt. And in oh, wait a minute. Oh, I see. We're a little bit out of order. I'm getting confused. I see what happened. In 1968, let's go back to that. Frankoma started the political mugs. So that's a donkey and an elephant mug. And those are what keeps us in business today. Without those, we wouldn't really have a business model at all. Those are very popular. We made lots of those, and every year we make lots of those and sell them. In 1971, John Frank was given the Outstanding Businessman of a Small Business of America award, and it was presented to him by Richard M. Nixon at the White House. Very prestigious award. But in 1973, John Frank passed away. The business then went to Johnny's, where she ran it for about 10 years until the fire in 1983. And then along the way, it got to be too much for her financially. And so she ended up losing the business to the IRS for non-payment of taxes. And so she lost it in 1990 to a good businessman up in Maryland named Richard Bernstein, who ran the company quite well for about 15 years. Then he sold it to a fellow who then sold it to another fellow who couldn't make the bank payments. So then it closed in 2010. Next page. Okay, along the way, about 2012, I purchased the Frankoma trademark and the existing molds. And we went primarily to online sales for a while, and then we decided to eventually start up the building here. So here in Glenpool. So I found a 5-acre plot. I retired from my job at Phillips, which is kind of a wacky thing, going from being a chemical engineer at a petroleum company to going into pottery. But Phillips kind of overpaid me, so I hate to say, but I was able to afford to do this. My parents were collectors. I was a collector of everything. And so living in Oklahoma for many years, you get to know the Frankoma pottery, of course, and I got to know the workers, and I wanted to see it continue. So that's why I bought the company ultimately, to keep it going. And so we built the building, and we're now making new items while trying to protect the company heritage. So we don't take an old item that Frankoma made back in the 30s and 40s and try to make something exactly like that. If we had that mold, which we might not, we would change it in some fashion, or change the color in some fashion, so you'd know that we are making a new piece. Next slide. So you can see some pictures now. This will show you the plaque we have outside. It's around our fenced area for the kiln building there in the back. And we give credit to the John and Grace Lee Frank. Both were equally important to the business, as well as Johnny's, their daughter, who came along later. Next slide. And there are some pictures of my entryways into the building. And these are all metal work done by Angel Ornamental in Tulsa. But you can see we have a wagon wheel plate there on the entryway, some cattle brands along there. And those came off of a Frankoma cattle brand trivet. On the right side, you can see some artistic pieces, the donkey mug, the ranch plate, the ponytail girl, a boot, the gardener boy and girl, a drill bit mug, a buffalo that John East had designed, and on and on. So we try to really give credit to the heritage items that Phillips, or that Frankoma had. So next slide. And so in our retail store, what do we do today? We sell both new and vintage items, which is a different take on it than what Frankoma did years ago. In Sapulpa, they just sold a new item. So we're selling both the vintage and the new. And we include dinnerware with it and artware. And we even acquired some molds from the Cherokee pottery, which was kind of, give us some different pieces to do. So we also do new items that we do. We include artware, trivets and mugs primarily today. And we have some designers who we work with, Orwell Knight in Bartlesville, who runs the Hopestone Cancer Survivor Center up there and has pottery classes he does. We have Wendy Savola, who's a tiki artist up out on the West Coast. And we have Cindy Cushing, who is from the Rose Arch Pottery up in Excelsior Springs near Kansas City. Next slide. And here's just showing you some of the classic pieces of Frankoma, that fairy green that's in the exhibit on the right side, and also shown there is a dinnerware set. We have vintage sets and we sell them. On the left side, we have some redbud Frankoma pieces in that redbud glaze. You just won't see much of that, but we happen to acquire a collection and we're selling those. Next slide. And here again are some pieces that we're doing. On the left side are some vintage pieces in that woodland moss glaze. That's a very popular glaze today. People really look for it. Then the brown satin beside it on the right. And then on the right side, those are some of our newer items like John East's Buffalo. There's that Orwell Knight vase we'll show again here in a bit. And nativity sets on the right side of that. And some pieces there in the middle were designed by Cindy Cushing. So next slide. You can see there on the left some greyhounds made for a certain bus company you might have heard of. And Frankoma made pieces for thousands and thousands of companies and organizations and churches and civic groups and all that. Just, we can show you dozens of pieces that I've got in the store here. And on the right are those, like I said, those famous political mugs that we sell a lot of. The next slide. And here's one of our workers. They're taking slip from a well that's in the pouring table there and pouring it into a mold. The next slide. We'll show you Trila there standing watching the molds. We leave it in there for about 20 minutes and then we pour it back out. And that kind of leaves that chocolate bunny rabbit that you can, hollow one that you can buy at Walmart. Kind of reminds you of that's in the mold that we take out of the mold and let dry, and then we trim it and then fire it. Okay, next slide. And then after you fire that piece, you then take it back out and you glaze it, hand glazing right here. But usually we do spray glazing, so that's much faster than hand glazing. But next slide. And this is another slide showing about the popularity of Frankoma. We have nationwide appeal. We're known all across the United States. We do company web sales in every state. We have several Facebook groups that are dedicated to Frankoma, like people buying and selling it, as well as displaying their collections or asking questions. If you go onto eBay and Etsy, you'll see significant internet sales and listings there. There's various websites, not only mine, but other websites that talk about all the salt and pepper shakers that Frankoma ever made, or here's all the catalogs that Frankoma ever made. And finally, additionally, there's several collector books written about Frankoma. Gary Shawm, who's a well-known book writer, he lives just down the road from us here a bit. And he's written one of the best books about Frankoma, lots of really good pictures. There's Phyllis Best, who's written a couple books about Frankoma, and then Sue Cox wrote one of the early books on Frankoma. And finally, they have a collectors meeting in Sapulpa every year in late September on a Friday and a Saturday, where collectors come and buy pieces and also trade pieces there. And there's usually a presentation too about Frankoma. Next slide. This is kind of the guidebook about Frankoma, clay in the master's hands. Donna Frank, the older daughter, who didn't really participate in the pottery company, she did, though, keep track of what was going on because she wrote the book that kind of tells the history of the Frank family and some about the pottery company, too. But this book is really useful, and I would recommend you finding it. It can be found on eBay and probably Amazon and other sites too. So that's, I think, the story as best I can give about Frankoma. And in the Frank family. Amanda?
Thank you so much, Dennis. Thank you, Daniel. I think
You're welcome.
now we'll go ahead and kind of open up the program to any questions anybody might have. If you all have any questions for Daniel or Dennis, please feel free to type them into the chat. And I just wanted to show everybody really quick. If you hadn't seen it yet, these are some views of our exhibit here at the museum, Frankoma Pottery, for those who like nice things. So I'll leave this up just for a moment so you can take a look. But Dennis and Daniel, I have a question for you while we give our friends a chance to type a question to you. So the question I want to ask you both. So you are so integral to the continuation of the Frankoma story. And I'm kind of wondering, you know, a little bit about the future and what are your greatest hopes and dreams for the Frankoma legacy moving forward? I'll give you a minute to think about it. Might be a tough one.
Well, from my perspective, I just want to see it, I want to keep it going as long as I reasonably can. And then I hope that somebody will be crazy enough to do what I've done, which is keep it going past me. It's such an important part of Oklahoma's heritage, and it's such a fun, interesting company that you just don't want those things to go away. It's a blessing, really.
Absolutely. Daniel, do you have any thoughts about the
Well,
continuation?
first of all, Jennifer and I bought this house largely because it was a Bruce Goff house. We came to a Frankoma estate sale, bought a few things, and then we bought the estate, essentially. So to me, it's very, very important as a Bruce Goff house. And only then did we start to learn about Frankoma. I thought that there'd be a lot of stray visitors coming to see Goff, but 9 people out of 10 that come here come to see the Frankoma house. They come to see the Franks, and they're on a Frankoma pilgrimage. So they kind of emphasize how important the Franks are and Frankoma is to them. And the city of Sapulpa is that way too, as well as all my neighbors. I mean, most of my neighbors have lived here for 40 years and they all swam in my swimming pool before I swam in it. You know, apparently the Franks were great hosts and they were really liked by everyone. So we're restoring the house to perfection, really. I guess because of the Franks, but really because of Bruce Goff, to tell you the truth. But you know, it's great to have the support of everybody and the backing of everybody when you do something like this. So yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead. It looks like we have a couple of questions, so I'm gonna take a look at those if I can pull them up here. Okay. We go to one. There's quite a few. Okay. Okay, so Daniel, this question is for you. If you can talk about comparisons, contrasts, observations regarding ceramic architectural elements at the Frank House and Frankoma products.
Well, first of all, let me just say that the house was built in 1956. It was designed in 54, 55. It was built in 56, and it's a very modern house. So it's, in effect, it meets the definition of mid-century modern. But to me, it's not a mid-century modern house. Mid-century modern is a particular kind of style. The reason it's not is because it's ornamented or decorated so lusciously with Frankoma and Frankoma colors, Frankoma textures, Frankoma module every place in this house. So it's not like this is a mid-century modern house. It's almost, in a funny way, it's kind of its time, but in a funny way, it's timeless. So maybe, I don't know, compare and contrast. It's kind of hard to do. what was interesting to me is when you take over a house like this, what are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with it? It was painted in such an awful way that all the Frankoma colors were kind of bleached out in the background. So you have to assume a palette that's going to bring those colors forth, that's going to bring Frankoma forth without it being so terribly busy. I don't know. I don't know the comparison part. I'm sorry about that. Okay.
Um, okay, so this is a question actually I can answer, which I'm really excited about. The next one is someone is asking if there's a Bruce Goff house on Brooks and Elm, which is actually right here by the museum. And yes, there is. It's called the Ledbetter House.
Okay.
And I think our previous director, so some years ago, did reside inside that home. So a few of us on museum staff have actually been inside for Christmas parties. It's pretty great. But yes, there is one. It's called the Ledbetter Home.
It's also, if I can just say something, it's currently occupied by a member of the faculty of the architecture school.
Yes.
And I want to just encourage you to go knock on their door and ask if that house.
Okay, Daniel encouraged that, not me. Okay, so Dennis, this may be a question more for you. So someone is asking about the collaboration. What was the collaboration with William Stone and Frankoma? Were there pieces in clay commissioned from William Stone work at his request?
Yeah, it's Willard Stone.
Willard Stone, okay.
Yeah, okay. So back in the 1950s, Willard Stone he lived in Locust Grove, Oklahoma, not too far away from here. And he drove to the factory one day and talked to John Frank. And Willard Stone was not financially doing real well at the time. And so he looked for a way to make some money with Frankoma. And what they ended up agreeing on was that Willard Stone gave John Frank about 5 pieces of his wood carvings, and John Frank converted those into pottery pieces. And those include the Marin Colt, the Coyote, the Madonna, and Indian Madonna, and on another piece I can't remember. But excuse me. But that was a good collaboration for them. I'm sure that Willard Stone made some money, which he needed. He had a lot of kids back then. I think one of his daughters told me there were 8 of them, so he needed some money. But that was the issue right there.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Dennis. This is also another one for you. So is the clay still sourced locally? And either way, does clay need any processing or refining before it's ready to be turned into pottery?
Yes, that's exactly the problem. It needs to be refined. And the way they used to do it was they literally get a shovel or a scoop of some kind and load the back of the truck, bring it to the factory, and then dry it. And then it would have to go through a grinding machine that was pretty tall. The one I saw in Spokane was really tall. And then they would add additives and water and ball clays, and then combine all that into a tank and keep it constantly stirred. And then from the tank, they would roll it through pipe and take it out to where the molds were to be poured. And all that is more work than we can possibly do. There's more steps in there too that I mentioned, but way too much work. So today we just buy our slip and clay from the area sources. So it's from the Midwest today, but not necessarily from Ada or from Sapulpa.
It does sound like a lot goes into that. So that makes a lot of sense. Daniel, Just a comment for you. So someone in our audience is applauding you for your stewardship of the home. There's also, okay, another question, Dennis, I think probably for you. So how do you balance maintaining Frankoma's traditional design and craftsmanship with incorporating modern production techniques and innovative design elements?
Well, so again, we try not to remake the same old piece the way it was. We do something different. Mostly today that involves different glazes. We buy or use different glazes today. So we can't do that old prairie green anymore. And again, I'll tell you why. Those old glazes were rutile glazes. So what you see behind Dan there is one of those are rutile glazes, and we can't do those legally on any item that would be in your kitchen because the EPA says no, they have lead in them. So we would do it in a different colored glaze, a more modern glaze today. That's one of the ways we work around that issue.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah. There is a fantastic question. So can you tell us a little bit more about the reason behind the Greyhounds with the bus company? Do you have anything else to share there?
Not really. Frankoma, well, those pieces are about 13 or 14 inches in length. Frankoma made them for the Greyhound bus company, but I don't know the specifics. It might have been for, I know Frankoma did a similar piece for American Airlines, and those were given to employees like Employee of the Month.
Sure.
So it could have been something like that. I don't know specifically. I know those were made in 2 different batches. The first time they made about 350 of them, and the second time, I suspect about the same number. So there's not a lot of those around. If you do see them, they'll run $300, $400, $500 a piece, and they're a good collectible.
Thank you. Daniel, we have one last question, and this is for you. What is the square footage of the home, and do you have central heat and air?
Yeah, the square footage of the house itself is about 3,100 square feet, but there's also a studio addition that was built by the Franks around 1960. It was not designed by Bruce Goff, and that's 500 square feet. So all totaled, I'd say 3,600 square feet. Much more cubic feet than in a normal house because the ceilings are very high. So the cubic feet is great. Yes, there's central air, and there's central heat. The furnace was initially in one of the 2 towers. And when they built the studio addition they moved the furnace to the back of the garage because they then enclosed the carport and made it into a garage. So right now, there's central everything. It's just very remote. You can imagine it's very long distance from that garage to the very, very end of the house. This is to say it doesn't work very well.
So before Dan bought the house, the girls had some kilns in the garage, and so those they used those kilns. Additionally, when I bought the company, Name and Molds, we rented the studio from the girls for quite a few years, and we made pottery pieces back there.
Yeah.
So it was kind of I got to go into the house many times just to see all that because of a worker who was there.
I've got a question for you, Dennis. You may know, you may not know. Do you know what the cause of the fire was the last time or even the first time? What the cause of the fire?
I don't really know the answer to that. Typically for pottery companies, it's the kilns, but I've heard different stories about the 83 fire that it started back amongst some cardboard.
Oh.
So it could be that a worker threw like a cigarette butt back there, You just don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. When we bought this place, we thought the studio was incredibly flammable. All of the dust from the pottery. Of course, it's all made out of wood except the back wall, which is made out of stone. It would not be the place that I would make pottery. It seemed extremely flammable back there.
Could be, you know.
Super quick question. I think this is mostly for you, although Dennis, I know you know about this, so you could chime in too. But can you tell everybody about the pink shag carpeting on the door?
Yeah, Bruce Goff is quite famous for shag carpet. He tended to put shag carpet up walls, on ceilings, all kinds of stuff. In fact, he was labeled by one architectural critic as the Michelangelo of kitsch. This house has a lot of hard surfaces, although it has a wood ceiling, and it's cut up, so acoustics are not too bad. But there are no doors except the doors into the bathroom. And he wanted to seal those doors and make them acoustically sound. So he put pink shag carpet up the door. What can I say? When I bought the house, I was kind of gritting my teeth and thinking, that's the very first thing I'm going to rip out of this place. I cannot stand that. And then I tried to do that with one of the other bathroom doors, and it took me like a day to take the carpet off and 3 days to put the door back together again. And I thought, well, maybe I'll just keep that pink carpet in that other place. And in fact, it's a big hit. People seem to love that pink carpet.
One of the problems there that Dan is being nice and not mentioning is the girls, Johnny's and Donna, who live there, they both smoked like chimneys.
Yeah.
So that shag carpet had to be quite full of smoke rather than.
Yeah, it was a dark gray. It was a dark gray. It took a while to discover that it was pink, which is not unusual in this house. There's a lot of nicotine in the house that we scraped off, and when you use heat to take off nicotine, it begins to vaporize the nicotine, and it makes nicotine clouds that go up and they stain your ceiling. Anyway, apparently the girls, the women were quite the smokers. Yeah.
Yes, very much so.
All right. Well, you guys, actually, I don't see any more questions in the chat, and we're just about out of time. So I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here. I do want to make one last quick comment, though. For the individual who had asked about the Willard Stone collaboration, there is a piece in our exhibition that is from that, and I believe it's a squirrel. So if you do want to kind of take a look when you come to the exhibition, that is here on view. So I guess I'll just go ahead and thank everyone so much for joining us for our very first Art a la carte. Thank you to Dennis and Daniel for sharing your stories with us today. If you happen to be in the area, be sure to stop by and see the exhibition before it closes on April 13th. And I also encourage you all to swing by the Cup of Jones, our new shop inside the museum, and they're selling some beautiful Frankoma pieces to add to your own collection. Thank you so much, everybody, and have a wonderful rest of your day. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Thanks, Amanda. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Goodbye.
Bye.